Bobby, you and I are going to continue this discussion, but right now I want to bring in Kelly, who is one of
Absolutely. I was talking to her over at DailyKos. It's marvelous human being.
Yeah, she's one of the new DailyKos writers, editors.
Let me get out the way.
Editors, and we want to have a word with her because she has been very inspirational over here at DailyKos. First of all, welcome to Politics Done Right. Want to let you know that you're live on air in Houston, Texas, and the entire Southeast Texas at this point in time. What brought you, first of all, before I talk about DailyKos, what brought you to Netroots Nation?
Great. Well, thank you for having me here. This is an opportunity for me to connect with our progressive colleagues around the country who are doing important work. This is an opportunity for me to connect with other contributors and members of the DailyKos community. And it's a chance for me to just continue to learn what people are doing and how people are engaging in this important moment in our country.
Now, how do you explain what the DailyKos community, for progressives who are listening to this station right now, many know about DailyKos, but many of them don't. So why should somebody why do you think this community is so important to the progressive movement?
Yeah, so DailyKos is a community that is really about news, but also about action.
And for me, it is particularly important because it's one of the few places in the progressive movement where people are not just keeping up with current events, but also acting. So there's a lot of engagement with people, a lot of conversations, and a lot of opportunities to actually participate. And for people who are looking for ways to participate in this current movement, again, in this particular and really important time in our country, I think it offers a platform for people to do that.
Well, I mean, were you a reader before you became a contributing editor as you are right now?
I was a reader, yes.
And were you selected because of that great writing I understand that you do right now? What do you normally write about?
So I write about race and gender and a lot about kind of Black Lives Matter issues related to all of the ways that Black lives and lives of color are at risk for different kinds of violence. And it's not so much that I was selected from the community. I actually came to DailyKos from doing work in the labor movement around equity and inclusion, but was recognized for the writing and the work that I do and was asked to come on board.
Now, when you write, because you mentioned Black Lives Matter, I don't know if you went to the Netroots Nation in Arizona when Bernie Sanders was interrupted by BLM, Black Lives Matter, and there was a distinct sect within the Netroots Nation that pretty much was aghast, which, given that we are a progressive organization, one would wonder how could that reaction be. You're writing a whole lot of that stuff. What reaction do you get, and are you finding yourself having to re-educate progressives on progressivism?
Yes. Yeah, so I was not at that Netroots. This is actually my first time here, which is why it's so exciting. But I am familiar with that event. I actually interviewed the activists who interrupted Bernie at that event earlier this year. And yes, I get similar reaction in my work around
at DailyKos.
Yes, absolutely. So the progressive movement is not a monolith. And there are wide-ranging views and experiences around race, and so I often experience that tension as people read my work. And I think it's important to engage in those conversations. So yeah, it's a lot of education and re-education because we're not all on the same page around race. And where we need to go in this moment in time around race.
Now, do you find that your writing over time has been more antagonistic or more educational for the people that you have following?
I think it's probably both. I think it's both.
Well,
I think.
Tell me a little bit more.
Sure. I think that for some people who are just now engaging for the first time in a serious way around race, it can poke buttons. And I say a lot of things. I don't mince words. I call things as they are. I talk about white supremacy. I talk about whiteness. I talk about characteristics of whiteness. And I should also say that I have an academic background, so a lot of things I talk about are probably concepts, again, that come from maybe academia that people are not always familiar with.
Right.
So I think it can be off-putting and shocking to people. And I take that as both a good thing and also educational.
No, you said something that I want to explore a bit more. You spoke about you're from academia, and a lot of things people haven't heard because they haven't heard it from sort of that. I don't want to sound presumptuous, but from that level of intellectuality, do you think as a writer, as an activist, as somebody in a community that is trying to enlighten folks, that maybe there is some way that, and I don't know if maybe you've gotten there already, that you get there so that people begin by listening first as opposed to reacting first?
I think that's a good question. So I would say a couple of things. So the term may come from an academic lens, like I use work that is grounded in critical race theory and black feminism, but I don't think you have to have an academic background to understand those things. These are things that are grounded in people's lived and everyday experience. So that's the viewpoint that I try to write from and I try to meet people at. I think that, again, people are still learning, and I think a lot of people are listening, and I think the vast majority of people are trying to figure out a way to engage with topics that are heavy. And, you know, in terms of education, we've all been socialized into a system that doesn't value lives of color. And so to talk about race from a way of saying I'm going to decenter that and center something else, you know, again, can be off-putting from people. But I think a lot of people are listening and struggling at the same time.
Well, you know, I think the distinct effort that what we have here with at DailyKos, and in fact at Netroots Nation as well, to attempt at really you heard at some of the meetings here where they're really trying to enforce diversity, not as a quota system, not as a we're just kind of doing this because we have to, but that it is necessary if we're going to have a functional society and a society that respects what the reality is, and that is all of us are human beings and all of us have a stake within the society and must be addressed within the society as such, would you say?
Absolutely, and I would say that diversity, equity, and inclusion is important for everyone. So I think there's this common myth that if we talk about Black Lives Mattering, if we talk about equal rights and the ways that certain lives and bodies are marginalized, it means that we're shifting focus away from other people. And I think that ultimately by bringing ourselves more in alignment with who we say we are as a country, I think that benefits everybody. So I think it's an important conversation for everybody to be having. I don't think it's about quotas, and I think I'm happy to see progressives struggling with it because at least we're talking about it.
If you don't struggle with it now, in 2018 would be the wrong time to struggle with it. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct.
Kelly Macias, it has been my pleasure to speak with you, and thank you for what you do at DailyKos. It is very important work.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
And,